discussion or live talk with you. Now, I'm going to start by doing 25 episodes about translation, and I will take it in turn, or I'll take it bit by bit, so that you are aware of these episodes. Now, the first episode, which is the one that I'm covering today with you, is going to be about dictionaries, and also what kind of tools that you need to be using when you are actually translating. Now, the most important part in translation is also the tools that you use. Now, these tools can be a reference, can be a dictionary, can be someone you contact and talk to. All of these can be also, sort of people that you can rely on. But of course, when you rely on them partially, because you don't rely on them totally. Only when there are difficulties in terminology, things related to that. Now, let me just give you an idea of what kind of things that I'm looking into today in this episode, so that you can actually be aware of how to use dictionaries, what kind of dictionaries you should be using. Not only dictionaries, actually dictionaries, encyclopedias, references, plus, of course, references in the field. If it's like, for example, if it's in the medical, you need to have references in the medical. In the medical in particular, you might have to contact doctors and nurses to ask them about certain terminology that they use or certain expressions that you're not aware of. So you need to have a good background of the fields that you're working on through the use of some of these references, or whether these references are written, printed references like books, or they are actually verbal ones that you contact like doctors and nurses, and they tell you. Now, the same applies to any other field. For example, if it's in religion, you need to ask people who are converse in religion, who are conversant in religion. They know a lot about religion. They are scholars and researchers. So you ask them about a particular expression or how a certain ritual is being done, so that you are aware of all the different environment of the text, not only the text, but the environment of the text, which is where you contextualize text to make it easier for those who are translating. Now, let me just sort of in order to make my presentation today a little bit more visual, shall we say, I'm going to actually just move and show you my presentation, which I prepared, and I want you to have a look at it and follow me with that. Now, I have here the presentation. Let me just try to slightly make it bigger so that you can actually see it better, and then you will be able to know what's happening here. Let me just zoom it in, and because that way you will be aware of what is required. Now, of course, introduction, I called it Introduction to Translation because of the fact that it is really Introduction to Translation. I'm assuming here that all translators who are actually working on translation, they should be having a good command of English and Arabic in their translation. That is the first step, which is like good English and good Arabic, let's say, if it's the second language. So good Arabic, good English is essential. This is something that is taken for granted. You should have that first. Then after that, of course, after the being aware or being really good at both English and Arabic, or the language 1 and language 2, or L1 and L2, then you move on to look at what kind of dictionaries you need to be using. And also, what are the problems that you face, and what kind of problems, and how do we solve these problems when we come across the problems that that occur. Of course, here when we, as Hassan Ghazala in his textbook says, that when we translate, we come across problems. We stop translating to think, rethink, and perhaps use a reference. Now, here where I stop here, I'm not going to focus on problems now. I will focus on problems in the other episodes that I have, which is about 25 episodes which I prepared. And I will, every week, I will try about this time of the day, which is on a Saturday, to actually give you a glimpse of what kind of things that I cover. Now, I will be covering quite a lot of items and quite a lot of areas, so that you are aware of that areas. Areas such as I will be covering syntax, grammar, I'll be covering also lexis, collocations, phrasal verbs, acronyms, abbreviations, metaphor, things like that, which I will be covering in my... I'll just go and show you sort of briefly what I'm talking about. This is what I will be covering here. These are some of these lectures or some of these that I will be working on. You know, when you were talking about also in Arabic, how do you translate ma, man, mata, asma al-alam, how do you translate them? Nominal common nouns, also redundant prepositions, non-semi-prepositions, Arabic pronouns. There will be quite a few, and then I will be ending at the very end of my series by looking at some of the methods used in translation as an approach and the processes and few of the problems. So this is really the plan that I am planning to be doing in the next few weeks. Each week I will cover only one aspect because there's quite a lot of aspects. Now let's go back to our presentation here and what is required here. And as you can see, here I'm looking at only the reference. When do you use a reference, really? When is it that you use a reference? Well, you use a reference when you are really in, you can't actually know what the source text is telling you, what problem, what is this word, or what is this term that you don't know, or what's this cultural reference that's being mentioned. So you are actually in a position to look for a reference. And that reference can be a book written about translation, let's say, or about the topic itself. It could be in the same subject. But let's look at the translation of, or let's look at the references as in the dictionaries. What kind of dictionaries? I mean, many students, as well as the translators, they ask me, Doctor, what is the best dictionary that I should use? Which dictionary is more reliable than another person? I would say, to start with, the best dictionary would be not really Google, and Google Translate is not a good dictionary. Let me just make that very, very clear. And this is really one of the major elements that I have, or major sources that are very problematic and actually can create a lot of mistranslations and mistranslations, incorrect translations. So you have to be very careful in the choice of dictionaries. Now, dictionaries, what do you start with? You start with monolingual dictionary that is in the source language. For example, you're translating from Arabic into English, then your monolingual dictionary would be Lisan al-Arab, Mu'jam al-Wasit, and many others. There are so many different dictionaries, Muhit, Mu'jam al-Muhit, Muhit al-Muhit, and so on. So monolingual, why monolingual? Monolingual is to understand the source text perfectly, because sometimes you might understand it. For example, the word atid, what does the word atid means? For example, so you need to actually look at the word atid and know what this word could mean, because you might actually think it is something, and then it turns out to be that you are not actually getting it correct. For example, the word atid means ready, means prepared, intended, and that is what it means. But that is, you will get from, I'm talking about in the Arabic first, before you look into the English. This is another. So the monolingual is first to understand the source text that you are working on. Any difficulties with any words? Then you move on to the bilingual dictionaries. And the bilingual dictionaries mean they are the ones that have got two languages, the source language, the target language. Like English Arabic, if you are translating from English into Arabic, or Arabic English, if you're translating from Arabic into English. And of course, from English into Arabic, there are quite a few good sources that are not very popular, by the way, in the market. And that is really one of the problems. Like, for example, the very well-known Hassan al-Karmi's dictionary is absolutely wonderful kind of English-Arabic dictionary, bilingual, and I haven't seen it in the market that much compared to other dictionaries like Al-Mawrid or Oxford, which is a shame really, because Hassan al-Karmi's dictionary is one of the best, if not the best, one that I've come across over the past maybe 25 years. Then there is a trilingual, if you are doing 3 languages, like in English, Arabic, and French, let's say, which is tri. Tri means 3. So bi means 2 and mono means 1. So really, these references that I'm talking about are references that are encyclopedia, like in Encyclopedia Britannica, for example, specialized books in the field. Like if you are talking about politics or diplomatic language, then you look for books that are in that area, diplomacy. Or if it is in legal system, then you look for dictionary or for specialized books in dictionaries that are or books that are in the law and legal translation, or in legal system, so you understand both legal systems. Not only these references, but you do need dictionaries, as I said, and these dictionaries either monolingual, English, and then you've got English, Arabic, Arabic, English, bilingual, as I said, or trilingual, which is French into English or French and Arabic. Now, having these types of dictionaries would be useful. For example, you have dictionaries that are online, which are quite useful. For example, Merriam-Webster online is a good English dictionary. There's also Cambridge Dictionary, Oxford Dictionary. These are the ones that you should rely on. Not Google. Ammo Google is no good. Uncle Google is terrible. Then you have Hassan al-Karmi, Al-Mughni al-Kabir, or Al-Akbar. There's Al-Mughni al-Akbar or Al-Mughni al-Kabir. One of them is thicker and bigger than the other. Then you have, for example, Al-Warraq, which has got Lisan al-Arab, Ibn Manzoor, and you have Mu'jam al-Wasit, as I said earlier, and many other dictionaries that use terminology. For example, if it's legal terminology, or political terminology, or pharmaceutical terminology, or petroleum terminology. Now, what is translation? According to our scholar Hassan Ghazala, he says that as a subject, translation generally refers to all the processes and methods used to render and transfer the meaning of the source language text into the target language as closely, completely, and accurately as possible. Well, that's fine with us, but then, when you are saying that, you need to know what kind of things you are using in order to, what do you have to be using? Well, you need to look at words and phrases first to find their direct equivalent to start with. This is the beginning, of course, when you look at just certain words. But then you can move on and find that there are new words and terms that are not ready-made in the dictionaries and not available in the target language. And then that's what will be a problem. Like, for example, computer, satellite, and so on. And it's been Arabized, or shall we say transliterated. Like Tony and Tony, when you are translating as a word, or computer, or al-hasub. And then you have transliterating foreign words, which means that you are writing them in Arabic letters, which you can do. And also, there are foreign words that you can use, and that is like Tony and democracy, which is a democratia, a utopia. That is really, so what do we translate really? We translate grammar. Do we translate words? Do we translate styles? Do we translate sounds? or do we translate something else? In actual fact, these are helpful. I mean, grammar is helpful to understand and to know what that is. It's very, very helpful to know grammar, to understand how the text is being built. Also, you need to look at the words and know what these words, because they are blocks on a page, and you need to know each words, what do they stand for, to start with initially. Also, you look at the styles, because some styles might be different from each other. Some styles are, let's say, for example, they are scientific, or they are very conversational, or whatever style that's being used. So you need to look at that. You do need to be aware of that as well. And also you need to know about sounds, especially if you're doing politics, so especially when you're doing poetry, for example. You need to also know the sounds, the rhymes, the rhythms, the certain alliteration, for example, or certain assonance and dissonance, and so on. But of course, these you do need to know these. But then you do need also to know not only these, you need to know something else as well. So it's not really just only just looking at it as just only the words or the grammar or the other elements that I've mentioned, which is the style and so on. So these are really important, of course. We should not deny that words are important. Grammar is important. Style is important. And sounds are important. And they can be more important in literary works, when you are translating literary books or poems and so on, than when you are translating something non-fiction, which is more of information, instructional kind of information. So, but then, if we need to be aware of these, the grammar, as I said, the words, the styles, the sounds, but there's a more important element which we need to be aware of that is not mentioned here in this list that I've just showed you. And this list that I have showed you require one more element that we need to look at, which is meaning. Of course, meaning is something that is quite really, it is a little bit difficult to pinpoint closely, because the meaning of a word is not really what we are after here only. We have to know the meaning of the word in its environment, in its group of words that come around it, surrounding it. In other words, the context in which this word is being mentioned, because this word can actually change in its meaning from one context to another, from one environment to another. So we need to be aware of that kind of environment. So the meaning is different. But how do we get this? I mean, this is just going back to this presentation to show you how this meaning is being mentioned here. And you can see that it is what we do is we are actually translating meaning. And what is meaning? Meaning is conveyed via these various elements. It is conveyed by syntax and grammar. It's conveyed by vocabulary, the words. It's conveyed by the style. It's conveyed by the sounds. All of these are conveyed via the actual meaning. In other words, the meaning is conveyed by these. So these are, we need to be closely looking at these as well. Phonology, sounds. So style, sounds. So basically, you have two languages, and these two languages, okay, let's say if you, for example, the first language, which is at the top, you will see the grammar, the style, the words, the sounds, and then also you need to have a look at the target, which is down there, and that is also the same kind but different, might have different words or different sounds. And also the grammar might be a little bit different. And also the style might be a bit different. So basically, that is what I just said about being, that you be aware of that, and that you need to be aware of that you are actually aware of all these, because these are extremely important in this first step towards a good translation. Now, how can you get a good translation? How can a good translation? It will be conveyed via words and conveyed by it's the same meaning. If you look at these two, these are two. Let's say this is the source meaning, this is the target meaning, okay? And around the source meaning there is a circle, and that circle is full of words and sentences and styles and sounds, and we are trying to get the meaning of the target text in the target text, and we have words and sentences and sounds and styles as well. Here, the issue is how good are you in conveying the same message in the target language in the same way as it is in the source language, that gives the same effect in the minds of the language readers or the target readers. So you need to give the same effect, the same message across, and then they will not have to actually struggle to understand what this particular message is, and they should not be struggling when they are reading the text, and the text should be easy to read. But it's very, very important when you're using dictionaries, as because this session is about dictionaries in the main, that you make sure that these dictionaries, by the way, they are prepared by scholars who are comparing between two items that look similar to each other. There are no two words in the two languages that can fit each other extremely well. For example, the word table does not fit well the word tawla. What about mindaga? And then the word desk is also tawla. So it depends on the environment of the word. Ma'ida is also as well can be for table. So which one is the most appropriate? Well, it will depend on the context. It will depend on the environment of the word. If it is about a banquet, then Ma'ida will be better than Tawila, for example. And Maktab will be better for a desk than Tawila, because Maktab is where you write. So therefore, when you are choosing the word Maktab, will be different. Now, of course, the dictionary might not have all these words for a specific word that you're looking for. And that's when you go back to the original language, the monolingual dictionary. For example, if it's in English, you read that in English. This reminds me of actually a colleague of mine who called me and asked me about the word galvanized. To be honest with you, I mean, it was in a context of leaders. The leader galvanized his followers or his soldiers. Now here, for example, the word galvanized is quite hard to understand or to know its equivalent in the target language. Because galvanized means a nail that is being treated so that it will not rust when you use it outside. That's why it's called galvanized nail. Now that's okay to say galvanized nail, meaning that you have dipped it in a certain substance, chemical substance, to make it not rust. But then how can you use the word galvanized when you are talking about soldiers and a leader with them? This is an issue of, if you look at the dictionaries, it might not give you the right equivalent in this context, because it's a different context. It's a military context, and that is quite different from the word galvanized nail. So therefore, what do? Of course, you need to read in the English dictionary. What does it say in English as galvanized? It means that, in one of the meanings, it means that to look at or make people, convince them to go back to with your idea. Okay? Sorry, can you say that again? Because I did not see your question. Would the word strengthen work? Yes, it can work. Shamail, Muhammad. It can work, the word strengthen, but that's not really strengthen in the sense of strong only. That's a very good kind of equivalent in English for galvanized. Strengthen his soldiers, and when he's talking to his soldiers and galvanizing them, and that is really, I mean, I would like to ask these who are following my presentation now to tell me what do they think of when we are talking about this particular word, for example. And I have another word, but let me just look at the word galvanized. You can say in galvanized, make them lean towards. In other words, stimality, junud, for example. It can be stimalatium, so trying to convince them to do something. That will be one of the meanings. But a more closer to the word strengthen, as Shamil has said, or Shamil has said, is to say شحذ هممهم, because you are actually, the leader is trying to push them towards doing something, or raise their morale, or raise their kind of readiness and preparedness for whatever is coming to them as an event. So you see, شحذ الهمم, هممهم, could be a good equivalent. Now, how did I come across this one, or how did I actually reach that point where I thought, yes, that's the one? It is by looking at the context. It's by looking at the environment of the word and how it is used. You can say strengthen, but it will be less strong as an equivalent than the word شحذ الهمم, which means to push their powers forward, or to make them raise their morale a little bit so that they can actually go ahead and go forward or move forward. This is really one of the most difficult elements here when you are choosing and selecting words for a certain meaning or for a certain context, in a certain context. And if you are to suggest any words that you come across, how do I actually get to know what is this word, and how would I get a word that's equivalent? I'm talking about just word, but of course it can be a phrase, or it can be more than a word, like when it comes to terminology, like for example expressions and proverbs and so on. You need to look at a similar cultural item in the target language to equate, or to be an equivalent to the source text as well. So that is how you can then reach a point where you can decide. Now, of course, the best way to do this is to use lots of synonyms from both languages. Look at the Roget's dictionary, for example, which is a thesaurus. It can give you a lot of vocabulary, a lot of synonyms and near synonyms, which can help you trigger in your head some meaning for yourself. But at the end of the day, I can tell you this, that any word that occurs in any sentence or in a sentence in front of you, that word will have specific meaning that is never been used in any dictionary before, may not have in any dictionary before. Now, what do you do in this case? You have to think. You have to know what kind of equivalent I should come up with. And that is based on your reading. If you don't read in both languages, I don't think you will come to reach a point where you can be selective and be very cherry-picking. Cherry-picking which word is the best word. Which word will give, like, hanging in the balance. على كف عفريت, for example. It's hanging in the balance. So when you say على كف عفريت in Arabic, which means on the palm of a genie or a spirit, then we are actually reaching a point where people would not understand what على كف عفريت means. It means that the situation is hanging in the balance. It means that it's not, it's not stable. The situation is not stable, and that is really one of the things that can actually be interesting to look at. This is the choice of the or the decision making that is playing a strong role by the translator. But how does the translator reach that point of deciding which word is the best one? After looking at consulting and sometimes insulting the dictionaries that don't give you the results, that really satisfying results that you want. Really, you just sort of feel so disappointed, frustrated that you couldn't find. That's why you insult the dictionary after you consult it when that term does not come to you or when that word does not come to you. But that word will never come to you unless you yourself can actually feel how the target text will be or how you can convey the same idea to the audience, to the target audience, without having the target audience raising their eyebrows and say, oh, what do you mean by that? Or making them shocked and unaware of what, or unsure what this mysterious word that you're using is about. So you need to be careful in your choice of words according to the context, according to the environment, using dictionaries, using encyclopedias, and good reputable encyclopedias, not rubbish ones like the ones that were when we're using Google. Well, Google is good in a way. At times it says improved a little bit because it's using statistics in its production of translation, but it's not to the point of where it reaches the standard of a human being yet, because it's how much you read as a translator, what is at the back of your head, how many vocabulary, how much you read in Arabic, how much you read in English, how much you read in the target language, how much you read in the source language, how much knowledge do you have as well. This is quite important in the fields that you are translating into, or from or into. So these, you need to know both vocabularies, both terminologies that are used in both languages. And if you're not sure, then you can rely on experts, but you don't rely on them to do the translation. You do the translation yourself. You are to contain the text. The text is under your service, not you're being slave to the text, the source text. You just listen to it and not being able to understand what's in the text. You need to understand what's in the text. You need to digest the text, the source text. Digest it so much that you can really assimilate it so much as the stomach would assimilate the food into the body of a human being. You assimilate that source text as much as possible in order to reach at the very end and decide that this is what is the source text is telling me what is. And if you're not sure, don't ever translate something you don't understand. Never ever translate something you don't understand, because when you translate something you don't understand, then you are writing something that is rubbish, which reflects badly on you as a translator, because you are the ones who's responsible for the target text as much as possible. And yes, it's true that you are actually conveying other people's views and concepts, well, the author's concepts. Yes, that's true, and that's the difficulty really, because you're trying to get into the mind of the author of the source text. They are not your ideas, it's somebody else's ideas. They are somebody else's concepts, somebody else's culture, somebody else's terminology in another language. And you are trying to take all this and trying to put all these concepts in your head and trying to produce a target text that's full of the same concepts. That's very, very important. Same terminology, same fields, same feel, if you like. That's how it is, and it requires a lot of both training, which is through courses and that, and also it requires talent, which is, unfortunately, if the translator is not talented, because you need to use the creative part of your brain in order to create a text that is similar, not exactly the same, but similar in ideas and concepts, and similar in many ways in its features and its characteristics. And that is really the main element. If there are any questions for those who are following me now and would like to ask me any questions, please do, either commenting on what I'm talking about, or maybe this is because it's the first episode, maybe about something else that they have in mind. I'm happy to listen to your comments or your queries if you have any, because I'm just now live. I'm actually I always make my videos live because live makes it much better and much more closer to the audience, because the audience now will know that I haven't edited anything and I haven't crossed out anything from my talk, as they do. So I will wait for your for any of your questions if you have any. Fire away if you have any. I will see them now on the screen, and if you have no further questions, then I will bid you goodbye, of course. But I will wait until you give me any kind of comments or any kind of points that you would like to me to explain. I'll be more than happy to do that as we speak. Now, of course, while we are waiting for any of these comments, I would say the most important element when you are digesting a text is to read the whole text, to understand the whole text, and to put any underline under the areas where you think that they require investigation, to find out what they mean, and so on, before you do that. Now, I can't see any kind of comments being made, so I might actually just say to you that thank you very much for joining this episode here, and it is the first episode. I will be, from now on, I will move on to the other episodes. I've given you some ideas of what are the things that I will be covering, and if you have in mind, or if you feel that you would like me to cover next week something in particular, please make sure that you can actually tell me that. Thank you, Umayda. And Islam Bassam, I just got here. So just only I wanted really for Islam to just say that I would like to know if you are querying about anything. Najwa, if she finds that it's very useful, what's the topic you are discussing? I am discussing Islam dictionaries and what kind of dictionaries you should use in order to, be able to translate or produce a good text. At the moment, I've started only with which dictionaries you should choose and how you should actually settle for a certain equivalent rather than any other. And then that was the first one. And I was just sort of to summarize what we talked about today is that what do you translate? Do you translate grammar, words, style, or sounds? You really translate these, but you do translate more, which is the meaning, and that is where you focus upon. And meaning can actually change from one context to another, and that's what you need to be relying on. You need to be relying on the context in which this word is occurring, the environment around this word, and whether it's a verb or it's a noun or a preposition, because it can change in meaning. For example, the verb, for example, the preposition in. He's in. He's in, يعني, you can say he's in means هو في الداخل, but then you can say he's in and out like a yo-yo. يعني هو يدخل ويخرج مثلما تلعب كرة، مثلما تصعد وتنزل الكرة المعلقة بخيط في اليد. فيعني هذا يعني الآن أنا يعني خطر في بالي هذا المثال وأعطيتكم إياه، لأنني أجد أن يعني what I find this occurred to me as an example, and I wanted really to give you an idea of how I look at a word and start to try to find its equivalent. And And of course, equivalent has to be there, but it doesn't have to be in one word. It can be 2 words, 3 words, whatever. So long as you prefer, you convey the same idea, you convey the same concept, because the concept is the issue that is at risk of being misunderstood or mistranslated in the target language. I hope that I have given you a good session as an introductory session, and next Saturday I will be looking more into some of the elements that we have looked at today, which will be grammar and syntax. Of course, there's a book I have published in 2013 called Arabic English, which is quite a useful one. This one, thank you, Islam, for joining us earlier. Next time she will say, she's saying, or is saying, yes, the book is 2013, and it is called Arabic English Syntax, where I talked about Arabic syntax and how it's translated into English phrases or from a syntactic point of view, looking at the sentence or a phrase from a syntactic point of view and translating it into another language. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining me today, and I am flattered for those who have just thanked me for this session. I hope that this session has been useful to you and has guided you a little bit into how to choose a dictionary and reference for your own as a tool of translation, and tools are very, very important. They can be also, these tools can be used online as well, so long as they are very good, respectable kind of dictionaries. Like Oxford, they have online for Oxford Dictionary, for Cambridge Dictionary, and for quite a few other like Merriam Online, Merriam Online, as well Webster are also good. Collins is also good, but Google is not. Google is for those lazy translators who just look at it and might help a little bit to understand part of the word and what it means, but Google is unreliable because it's the garbage in and the garbage out, as one of the scholars have actually described it. So that is really what is Google about. So Uncle Google or Auntie Google, or whatever you want to call her or call him, agony aunt, complaining to Google about how bad their translation can be, or in terms of as dictionaries. Okay, Omeda, thank you very much as well for this. I hope that you enjoyed it and that it was a good session to learn from. Have a nice day, and because I haven't seen any more comments here, I would have to actually bid you goodbye and have a good evening. Bye-bye.